Probably one of the other things about that you wrote that I shared the most was why the most educated people in America fall for anti-Semitic lies for the Atlantic. And just realized it's been like a year, maybe a little over a year since you wrote this. I wanted to hear just your reflections on anti-Semitism today, what's happening on campuses today.
Right after October 7th of 2023, I was asked to participate in this anti-Semitism advisory group to the now former president of Harvard, who did not take our advice, shall we say. It went incredibly badly. In fact, it went so badly that I ended up as a witness in Congress's investigation of these universities. So I sort of had a front row seat to this unbelievable train wreck. And what I found was that, and this is something, I mean, I did write about this in that article, but it's become much clearer to me since then. A few things. Like, one is that I felt like there was this whole media narrative around what was going on campuses where it was put out as this argument about free speech and protests, and, you know, that was what and, you know, criticism of Israel. And I will tell you that when I was on this committee, the minute my name became public that I was part of this committee, I was inundated with Jewish students asking for help. I will tell you that not a single student was like, oh, I don't like what they're saying at some protest, right? Like, that was never what they were telling me was the problem. What they were telling me was the problem was, I don't like having my dorm room vandalized. I don't like having my professor throw me out of class for being Israeli.
I mean, one of the students said that they had to take their final in the encampment. I mean, it was the level that these students were experiencing targeted and almost
Yes.
violent, like, hate and attacks on their safety. Like, they were afraid to go home. They needed people to escort them to their dorm rooms. It was
Yep.
such a horrific violation of their basic just right to safety.
I mean, and that's what this was. I mean, this was not, you know, this whole idea of like, oh, this is big debate about free speech. It's like, no, literally what these students were, they were like, I don't like being spat on my way to class. Right? I mean, I don't like that I can't leave my dorm room without literally someone following me, me personally, with a megaphone through campus.
How about at UCLA when they were being asked to identify their religion in order to walk through into their classrooms?
Yes, absolutely. So, I mean, this is like, you know, and in some cases, this is actually violent attacks. Yeah, this is, you know, a student who, you know, came back to her dorm room, a first floor dorm room, and facing in toward on her windows of her dorm room are signs that say, fuck the Jews. Not even Zionists, right? I mean, just, right. I mean, it's just crazy. So, you know, and so that the idea that we have to like pretend that this is a conversation about Israel, it was like, you know, it almost didn't even matter what was happening in the Middle East. I mean, that was one of my favorite hilarious moments in this was there was some big class walkout, and this was in November of 2023, where they're like, you know, walk out for a ceasefire, you know, walk out of all your classes, and they came in and disrupted all the classes with megaphones and everything, you know, walk out for a ceasefire in Gaza. This walkout happened during a ceasefire in Gaza. And it happened again, like just a couple months ago in Colombia. There was like, you know, giant protests, protests for a ceasefire in Gaza. I'm like, guys, I have great news for you. There's a ceasefire in Gaza. It's like, what's happening in the Middle East is basically irrelevant
Totally.
to this, right? I mean, this is about, you know, this is about intimidating. I mean, in these cases, this is like directly about intimidating to a student. So in terms of like what's happened since then, what's become much more clear to me since I wrote that piece and since I was involved in this congressional investigation is with the universities is they're teaching this. I was part of this Harvard Jewish Alumni Alliance, and I did not do this, but other members of that group did this massive audit of everything that Harvard has been teaching about Jews and Israel in recent years. And I mean, it's astounding. What we're basically talking about is people teaching anti-Semitic lies in class. Not as like an opinion, but like as the basis of the class. Like an entire class about settler colonial determinants of health, where we're talking about, you know, Israel as a settler colonialist state. This is a talking point from the KGB. Israel as a settler colonialist state is a talking point that emerged from the KGB in the 1960s. That is the origin of that idea. a lot of those ideas actually come from the KGB. Zionism is racism, that's a KGB line. Zionism is genocide, is a KGB line. Zionism is apartheid, that's a KGB line. This is all, I mean, a lot of this is like, material that goes back to the Soviet Union is no basis in reality. Anti-Semitic lies are being taught in class. And so, I mean, in that point, it's like, to me, it's like, I don't think you can legislate this away because they're teaching this, right? I mean, it wouldn't even matter. Like, to me, it's like, whatever's happening with these protests is like kind of beside the point. When this is what you're paying for as your education. I mean, and so like all these things about it's viewpoint diversity. It's like, well, imagine if like you had a history department that's filled with Holocaust deniers. The way to fix that is not let's also hire someone who thinks the Holocaust did happen. There's a bigger, deeper problem here, which is I've now come to understand is like sort of the foundational aspect of anti-Semitism since ancient times is I think it's less about it being a prejudice than it's a lie. And all the sort of aspects all the different manifestations of anti-Semitism that we see, whether it's conspiracy theories, Holocaust denial of the atrocities that happened on October 7th, or even, denial of the fact that Jewish civilization is native to the land of Israel. Like, all of those lies are part of this foundational big lie, which is that Jews are the obstacle to whatever you value most, and therefore they are collectively evil and should not exist as a collective. Like, this community, in whatever form it takes, has to be eradicated.
Why was the KGB making those lies?
This is a shift that happens, actually predates the KGB. This is the beginning of after the Bolshevik Revolution, when they overthrow the Tsar, this communist revolution in Russia in 1917. Already by 1918, the Bolsheviks want they want to have the 2 million Jews of the former Russian Empire on their side. They're waging civil war to take control of what's going to become the Soviet Union. Even at that time, they create what are called the Yevsektia, Jewish sections of the Communist Party, to spread Marxist propaganda among Jews. In 1918, their slogan is, "We are not anti-Semitic, we are only anti-Zionist." That is in 1918. It's 30 years before the creation of the State of Israel, so it's probably not about Netanyahu, right? And so that is like this foundational idea, and for them it comes from this idea of this, what becomes this imperial idea that, like, communism has to encompass the whole world. We have to outlaw all kinds of nationalism because workers of the world have to unite, and we have to erase all differences between people. That's like sort of this ideological idea that they have. And so, and they want to be all modern. So it's like, of course, and then, we were against the Nazis in World War II. We don't believe in this racist idea of anti-Semitism. We are only anti-Zionist. Meanwhile, while not being anti-Semitic, just being anti-Zionist, they managed to persecute and imprison and torture and murder tens of thousands of Jews. And this goes to that idea that becomes a tyrannical regime that can't tolerate any form of dissent. So any tyrannical regime is going to go after the Jewish community because the Jewish community is a nonconformist community, right? In whatever form that takes, like, this is always going to activate, it's going to piss off tyrants. So it's like, Jews can only be Jewish under our terms, right? Which is, in this case, you cannot be a Zionist, right? Because that is undermining our ideas. In the 1960s with the KGB, what happens is at that point, they've created a full-blown empire where they have client states in many parts of the world, and they have all these client states in the Arab world that are basically Soviet proxies that they're basically under Soviet control or Soviet sponsorship in the Middle East. And what happens is they basically have goaded a lot of these countries, which were, there's multiple reasons for this, but in the Six-Day War, when you have these countries that are devoted to the annihilation of Israel, and they lose badly. Right? I mean, you have the massive loss in the Six-Day War of these countries that were Soviet-sponsored countries, were being supplied and trained by the Soviets. They have to explain this loss, right? Which is hugely embarrassing for them. It is a huge hit to their power.
Wow.
And so they start this massive propaganda campaign about, the evils of Zionism. And it's all the same stuff that you see even from the Nazi period. I mean, all the same, the Zionists have this diabolical, unbelievable power. They have to be squelched in any way possible. They have this world domination and control. They're controlling the American media, all that kind of stuff. except they're calling it Zionists instead of Jews, but it's the same. And for them, it serves this purpose of, delegitimizing the state of Israel and making it appear that this is like, that their orbit, there's these Arab countries that they've sponsored have been, beaten by this, horrifying, Zionist evil empire. It's a way of being like, it's kind of a way of being like, look over there, like, whereas meanwhile the Soviet Union is actually running this tyrannical empire that's, oppressing people around the world.
There's like I've been in conversations with some other incredible Jewish thought leaders who talk about, it's time to sort of sunset the word Zionist, because we've achieved it and it has materialized. And so we're not in the pursuit of it. It exists. It's not up for debate. It's not up for conversation.
The relationship between the Jewish people and the land of Israel is, it can't be disentangled, to be honest. It's like, everything about Jewish culture is based on, it's even the microclimate of the land of Israel, right? It's like, why do we have all these penitential holidays in the fall? Because, in the ancient Near East, this was one of the civilizations that didn't have a river. All their water comes from the sky. It only rains in the autumn. That's why we have like Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur and these holidays in the fall. It's like this big rain dance. Like, we're still celebrating that in North America, but it's tied to this, like, it's like any indigenous culture around the world, right? It's like extremely tied to this place. Even the word we have for holiday, Chag, it's the same as it's the cognate for the Arabic word Hajj, right? Because these were pilgrimage holidays when people made the pilgrimage to the temple in Jerusalem in ancient times. That's literally what we call our holidays, pilgrimage to Jerusalem. So, that can't be disentangled. But the modern political movement that we call Zionism, it emerges at the same time as all the other national movements around the world, right? The late 19th, early 20th century, because this is when empires are crumbling, right? This is the beginning of the end of the Ottoman Empire, of, what later becomes, the end of the British Empire, the French Empire, Japanese Empire, the Russian Empire, right? This is the moment when you have this, fall of empires, rise of nation states. Zionism is like a very typical 20th century national movement, like all of the other 20th century national movements, and they all kind of unfold the same way in that these empires are partitioned into nation states. There are these massive population upheavals that are, happen with the partitions of those nation states, right? You see that with the creation of the state of Israel. You have this war for independence. There are 5 Arab armies that invade. During that war for independence, 70% of the Arabs who lived in what became the Jewish state are displaced from their homes. And in the very same time period, when you have the emergence of 22 Arab states, virtually all Jews from those emerging Arab states are expelled from their homes. So it's like, and that is a terrible and tragic story. And it's exactly the same thing that happens in the partition of India. Right? And it's exactly the same thing that happens in Greece and Turkey a generation earlier. It's the same thing that happens in Germany and Poland. It's the same thing that happens in, Czechoslovakia and Hungary. It's the same thing that happens in like a lot of sub-Saharan Africa. Like, this is a story of the 20th century. What's unusual about Zionism is its success. Right? That this is like, these were all anti-colonial movements, and this one was successful. Not all of them were successful, and it's also successful in creating, a democratic modern country. And a lot of these other anti-colonial movements resulted in autocracies. So it's unusual in its success. So in terms of retiring the word, yes, Zionism is kind of a moot point. It achieved its goal. So we don't really need this word anymore. But I don't feel like we need to, when you say we need to retire the word, yes, because what you see is there's all these other countries, there's like probably at least 100 countries in the world that were formed in almost exactly the same way that the state of Israel was formed. There's no anti-Jordan movement.
No one sits here and thinks about whether Pakistan should exist, right? Like,
yes, there's no. Pakistan, great example, right?
Literally the same time frame, 1 million people died in the land transfer. I've never heard of anyone who sits at their house and wonders whether Pakistan should exist. It's not
exactly
an actual.
It is irrelevant.
Why are we talking about this? It exists. It's on the map. Move on with your life.
Correct.
That is sort of why.
And this is the world we've inherited. And so, yes. So should we retire this word? The only thing is that like. The only reason to retire this word is because of how it has been co-opted by people who want to uncreate the state of Israel.
Okay, I want to ask you just some quick questions, and then I will let you go because I know it's been so long, but I always love talking to you. And this is mostly because I'm going to use this. I'll post this several times, but I'm also going to use this. So I think I mentioned that I've been working with a bunch of these students over the last year, helping them build our Campus United. And so,
Yes, amazing work.
um,
Thank you so much for everything you're doing.
so short, quick, but do you have a message for Jewish students on campuses?
Yes. I speak frequently on college campuses, and it often happens that someone will, ask me hostile questions during my event or, sort of try to heckle me or something. And I answer their questions, and they never heckle me back after that. They just say to me, wow, I never thought of it that way before. And to me, this is amazing because what it shows is there's so much more ignorance than malice, and that is a huge opportunity. And, what I always tell people is, I'm interested in hearing people's ideas for building a future together. And what that means, though, is that for Jewish students, is that they need to approach this moment with courage. I'm going to give one example. I was speaking at one college campus where a Jewish student told me that she was in a class where the professor was, someone in the class was making anti-Semitic comments in class, and the professor's not pushing back at all. And she said, I wish I had said something. She says, at the time I didn't say anything because, because she was afraid, right? Like, I know that if I speak out, I'm going to be doxxed, I'm going to be pilloried online, and all that stuff is true. There's 100% going to be a cost to speaking out. But what I told this student is, you're not thinking long term enough. Because what you're not thinking about is the cost of not speaking out. What you are losing by not speaking out. Because by not speaking out in that moment, you gave up that room to people who hate you. You also lost the opportunity to find out who else was on your side. Because the reality is, like, most people are not haters. And most people are, not on board with, like, saying yay to Hamas. Right? Frankly, most Palestinians are not fans of Hamas, right? This is not, a popular cause. And the reality is that there are a lot of people who are on your side, and you don't even know that they're on your side. And you won't find that out until you speak out. And so to me, this is like the moment to find the courage to speak out and consider not just the costs of speaking out, but what you have to gain. And what you have to gain is your own integrity, but also, like, honestly, like, there's a lot of the movement against the Jewish people that's, quite frankly, a house of cards. It's not that hard to flick it over, and people are just afraid to try. So my message for Jewish students today is, as it says in the Tanakh and the Hebrew Bible, chazak ve'ematz, be strong and courageous. And, to me, that is the hardest thing for young people to learn. And if you make this decision to be courageous, the rewards that you will find later in your life are uncountable and immeasurable.
I love that so much. I wrote down, you wrote, one revolutionary idea in Jewish tradition is hope, but the future that we choose here in America is up to us.
You are the leader that you want to see.
Thank you.
Like, if you're looking around and there's no one who's leading the way that you want, that you think there should be, like, that means that it's you. Thank you for doing this. I really appreciate this. This was me being like, can you help me promote my book? So this was
Oh my
like,
God, stop it. I would do anything that you say.
Oh my God. Well, likewise. So thank you. Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be with you. And thank you for everything you're doing.
You too. Bye.
All right. Thanks. Bye-bye.